It knows where to swim. It'll know where to swim. Now, in the beginning, you'll think that it's something external. After a while, your take on who you are will begin to change. How does that change? Let me pose to you a very logical question. Who was in your mother's womb before your first two cells were put together? Your mother may have been cooking, so she didn't put your toes together in her womb. You didn't put your toes together because you didn't exist. So the question is, who put you together in the womb? So then, if your name is Bar, yoga says, well, forget Bar. And you say, how come? I like myself. And yoga says, yeah, but who was there before Bar? And then you're forced to think about your real identity. Rumi calls it the breath behind the breath. Who was there before your first two cells joined? You see, if you can switch your identity from Bar to I am the one breathing through this body, and as I exhale, I manifest my needs. Let me explain that again. This would be a nice thing for you to remember midday in a busy day. Just when the breath comes and say, I am the force moving through this body, and as I exhale, I act. But the I here is not named Navi. It's a different I. If you're able to switch to that position, you will get the promotion, you will be much calmer in the office, there will be no lack of self-confidence, nothing. Every bit of pain you have is from your first and last name, even if you love yourself deeply. Why? Because Barbara is a word that they gave you in the maternity ward. It may have been your mom's favorite. That's irrelevant. The essence of you is not Barbara, nor is it Kambiz. So what I'm saying is, let me hear some more names here.
Samir. Samir.
Samir. See, if you really start to get stuck in the Samir, you start to experience pain. Why? Because it's literally unreal. In terms of your essence, if you keep saying, Samir did this, Samir opened up this company, Samir makes 500,000, you start to get ill. Because the notion of Samir is false. Why? Who was there before Samir in the womb? So you say, well, it was the Lord, it was Allah. Well, what I say is, why are you looking up at the sky? Why are you looking up at the sky? What if your essence is that force? When you look up at the sky, you're almost not taking responsibility for you being the image of God. So as far as Kriya Yoga goes, Kriya Yoga says every time you take an in-breath, that force flows through the hollow bamboo of your body. And with the exhalation, it acts. So you still take wonderful care of your body. Do it. The body, according to yoga, is like a vehicle. Take wonderful care of it. Smell like roses, nice clothing, all of it. But if you start to believe Samir as the absolute doer of everything, you start to get ill. You see this with egotistical people. They start to get ill. The only way you can have $16 billion and not be nervous is if you say, I am the force that comes into Robert's body. With the exhalation, I make 16 billion, and I let other people have something. In other words, you become the custodian instead of the owner of the 16 billion. If you become the custodian, you don't get ill, and you may become a lot richer, because the ego literally explodes with 16 billion. You know, the physical body can't handle 16 billion. But that can handle anything. Because you're very humble. That breath is very humble. It's not yours, you're handling it. Look at the great people of the world. None of them take possession of the accomplishment. They do incredible things. It's as if there's a force moving through them. Here are two types of teachers. Watch. I am here. Here's the second kind of teacher. You are here. What's the difference between these two types of teachers? The second one says, you're here. Meaning you become valuable. You see, the teacher defers to you. Like that. So I really advise that at least twice a day, go with this practice. When you breathe in, go back to the womb before your first two cells put together. When you breathe in, say, I am the one breathing through this body and drawing out the plans for the day. And see what it feels like. This is what meditation does to you. It starts to weaken the word Kambiz. But you don't lose self-confidence, you gain it. Why? Because you're closer to reality of who Samir is. This is why after a deep meditation, there's this feeling of oneness. People want to hug or something, because the border of the ego crashes. It's a false thing. So the first thing I teach is Kriya Yoga. I initiate you, I enliven that energy in you. Your 72,000 channels start to become cleansed. Incredible inner silence. Joy regardless of circumstances. And also, Kriya Yoga is very much in touch with that pulse. So a lot of doors start to open up in your lives. The second way that I teach that the quieter your mind becomes, the faster you vibrate. The faster you vibrate, the more in tune you are with the pulsation of the God force. In other words, let's backtrack a little. How many of you believe that this world is made of energy? Okay. So then if you talk to any scientist, they'll tell you the language of energy is either waves or vibrations. A scientist measures energy with things like an oscilloscope. Or if they hook you with an EEG to the brain, you see that brain waves have waves. The sun's heat has waves. So this world being made of energy is made of waves and vibrations. So then, if everything around you is made of waves and vibrations, in order for you to be a lucky woman or lucky man, you have to vibrate at the same frequency as that force. It's a very logical talk we're having. If the foundation of life is this, and you're praying in church with this, see, this is the creator, this is you praying, then there's no match. Take the world of walkie-talkies. The ambulance service is on one channel, the airport tower is on a different channel, the taxis are on a different channel. This is so that their conversations don't get mixed up. Same thing in metaphysics. I've been to the highest state of meditation. It's called samadhi. I was in samadhi for 8.5 hours. In that state, I was not here. All I felt throughout the galaxy was, that's all there was. There was a pulse. Every time that pulse went outward, it created. Every time it withdrew, it went into silence. In yoga, there's a name for this. Anmesa, nimesa. Anmesa, nimesa. It means the life of a wise person only has 2 strokes. You wake up in the morning, do your prayer and meditation, anmesa. Come back to the inner world, and then put on your clothes and go to the office. That's nimesa. The perfect life, perfectly organized. The place where you go wrong is this. Something happens on the outside, and you stop taking that thing too seriously. That's what happens. Like a recession comes, and you forget to meditate. I've lost some good students that way. You see, you forget the two-part formula. You wake up in the morning, you come out of that, you go to the office. That's all it takes. You don't need the news, you don't need to get worried, just 2 strokes. Unmessa, nimessa. This is in the Spandakaras. It says all of life is a throb. Come within, gather yourself, go without, and act. You don't pay attention to anything else. You know, they tell you about a recession. You go into science and you realize you only need one job. So in the middle of a recession, is there one job in Dallas? Of course there is. So what's the thing about the news? It's over-information. See, very successful people, they know where they're going. The mind is really focused. And they all have some technique of going inward. All of them do. Because your nervous system is like a rubber band. If you stretch it too far, it's going to snap. You need some inner sanctuary on a daily basis. What do some of you do to gather yourselves? Yoga, right? What else do you do? Or is one of you a bicycle rider or a hiker? Yes? So that's unmessy. It doesn't have to be this. You need some form of unmessy. In other words, that silent field within. So, the second foundation of my teaching, I teach you to raise the vibrational frequency of your body so that you start to open doors of opportunity. So let me tell you about the 2 first foundations. Number 1, the system is clogged. You need a breathing technique that will unclog your circuitry. Because in a clogged fashion, you cannot have a feeling of well-being. Well-being means that things are flowing. Okay, that's one. So that's Kriya Yoga. The second is that in a world of energy, you need to know at what speed to vibrate. Or else, all of life is a real struggle. When I was a banker, I was extremely smart, had a Harvard degree, but everything was a struggle. Why? Because I didn't like my professional life. I was vibrating at a low speed. So I got a lot done, but everything weighed 4 tons. The minute I went into life of writing and working with people, I still work very hard, but nothing is a struggle. How long did it take for this to come together from the first email? 3 weeks maybe? So this is one smaller example right now. And then as we set up this, somebody from an Indian organization called me and said, you must have a talk tonight. So we don't know where that came from. Right? And then I'm traveling the world on a budget that you would not believe. Like every one of my flights around the world is like $6,000, and I'm constantly doing it. I work hard, but it's not a struggle. Wall Street was a struggle. So was a bad marriage. So is the wrong profession. So is this Samir. It becomes a struggle. You need to breathe into a hollow bamboo and then just act. I am in this world, but not of it. That doesn't mean being antisocial. It means your best friend is inside. You're having a dialogue with somebody others don't see. People think you're crazy. You should actually be behind the steering wheel, talking to yourself. Hello. Do you like me today? Talk. After a while, you start to get some answers. It's not schizophrenia. Talk. Assume that there's a higher one that puts you together. Start to talk. This is a non-religious talk I'm having with you. Assume that there was somebody in the womb before Samir. There was. So if you say the Lord, I'm saying, why are you looking at the sky? Yoga says that's your essence. That's the real you. See, it's a case of mistaken identity. The more you say Adile, 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 the identity gets confused. Because there was somebody before you. Why aren't you her? All problems disappear. Fear, lack of self-confidence, all the numbers that the media does on you. I teach in 3 continents. You're going to think this is funny. I teach on 3 continents. In every class, every woman has the wrong image of her body. Every woman on 3 continents thinks that she's fat. I'm telling you from direct experience. I go to Sri Lanka, same story. India, same story. Minnesota, same story. Where does this come from? Well, the minute you become Kathy, there are all these problems. Which takes me to my 3rd foundational teaching. When I went to India, I basically befriended all of the grand masters like Ravi Shankar, Satya Sai Baba, Muktananda, Maharishi. What I realized is that there's a lot of beautiful, white-clothed, incense-burning people in the Himalayas. And they look gorgeous until Father calls on the self. Then all peace is lost. What am I really saying here? You see, you can own yourself to this until Papa calls. What am I saying? You haven't gone through the middle. Mary Magdalene, the prostitute, becomes the best friend of Christ. Is that possible immediately? Excuse me, from the whorehouse to Christ immediately? No. You have to work with yourself. In other words, there's girlhood, womanhood, and then sainthood. You can't go from girlhood to sainthood. So this is where I deviate a little bit from the typical class of meditation. I say, if you really want to be a yogi or a calm person, if you really want to have self-confidence, you have to walk through your fight. If you're Mary Magdalene, you have to deal with having been a prostitute. You have to heal from it. You can't own that way. If you used to drink, you can't go straight to samadhi. There's nothing wrong with you, there's no shame. It's just that your vibrational frequency is off. Let's imagine that one of you is like this on Saturdays. You get my notion, right? Woodstock. I'm from that generation. Now, you're one of these. And then you fall in love with the junior tennis champion of the USA. You're madly in love. But before you take the date, what's the chances of that marriage? 0. Why? Because you're living in a world of vibrations. In a world of vibrations, she's vibrating here with tennis, and you're here. So then the chances,
addicted to the smell of the pot.
the chances of that romance are small. You may even go to church and get married, but the success ratio is very low. Why? Let me give you some encouragement here. Let's imagine that you're making $2,000 a month and you want to make $5 million. What metaphysics says is that the $5 million is not non-existent. The $5 million is vibrating here, and your imagination takes you to 2,000. So that the 5 million is there, you simply have to raise your vibrational frequency. I've seen this in my own life as a meditation teacher. The way I impact teachers now, at the age of 61, is very different when he first met me. In other words, my own vibrational frequency is going up. So is yours. In other words, progress is just natural in life. We're only talking about the speed of it. What I say to you is, if you want that tennis player, it's not that she's unavailable. You have to prepare yourself for her. You have to plan to get married to her. In other words, if she's an athlete, this has to go away. Because you'll be vibrating at two different frequencies. Try this. Walk into a Rolls-Royce dealership with your sneakers and talk to a Lamborghini salesman with your $2,000 salary, and then report back to me tomorrow. Is there a Rolls-Royce dealership in Dallas? Yes. I give you this exercise. I want you to walk in and talk to the salesman. Do it. Only as a joy of life exercise. And then report back to me in terms of how you feel. That moment, if you stay aware, you see some very strange things happening to you. Do it and report back to me. Some of you may just go in like this. That's good. If you walk in like this, you're vibrating at the same frequency as the bed. These are material examples. I gave you the romantic example. You can't just accidentally become Christ's best friend as a prostitute. That prostitute must have been cleansed somehow. You know, because Christ is vibrating so highly, you can't go from the whorehouse right next to him. He's forgiving. We're not concerned with him. We're concerned with you being able to talk to a Lamborghini salesman or have tea at the Ritz-Carlton. These are awful examples, but I'm challenging you. I want to see if you can be really relaxed in a Rolls Royce. It may mean nothing to you, but see if you can relax. It'll bring up all sorts of things. A yogini is somebody who knows who she is. It's called unconditional love and acceptance of the self. You can laugh in Rolls Royce and have a bicycle instead. It's like you go to a party and say, "Hi, this is Kathy." You know what the difference is? Your lens is turned outward instead of the lens looking at you. Anybody who has low self-confidence feels that the world is looking at them. When meditation becomes deep, you start to witness them. It's very strange. The lens turns the other way. You're not staring. You walk in Manhattan and you're a witness. There's no self-consciousness. The other way is like, is my hair okay? Am I too fat today? Like that. The lens is back, turned this way. So what's the third way that I work on you? Listen to this, look at my hands. An event occurs. You form a perception of what just happened. The perception rehearsed in your mind turns into a core belief. The core belief starts to drive your actions. The actions create predictable results. And then we have what we call in America, the self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me give you a real example so you can follow my answer. A man comes into my office in Tehran. He's 48 and he's just gone through his third divorce. So I take him through this model of the 6 rectangles. Listen carefully and you understand me. I say, "You were divorced 3 times?" He says, "Yes." And I say, "Who was the first woman in your life?" "Mom." So I said, "Okay, well tell me." He said, "It was awful. I was 3 years old. She walked into my bedroom and said, 'Son, I'm leaving your dad for another man.'" So, follow my hand? That was the event. So So then I asked him about the second box. I said, what was your perception when mom hugged you and left? And he said, she deserted us. She left us, the other man had more money, and she ruined my father because he turned into an alcoholic after her. So that was the perception. Then I took him to the third step. I said, when you were in college, what was your main belief about women? And he said, funny you asked that, because I would be on the second date in a very romantic restaurant, and all I could see was the moment of the breakup. So now, follow the first three steps. Mom comes into the bedroom, says goodbye. Second step, your initial perception is mom was disloyal and a deserter. Third step, now your core belief about women is that they leave. That's the core belief. Now let's go to the fourth step. I asked him, what does your daily behavior look like? He said, Mr. Naficy, do you have a wife? I said, yes. He said, first of all, you should divorce her. But if you don't, then I need to teach you a few things about life. And I said, well, teach me. He said, you need to keep an eye on your woman. So I said, well, how do you keep your eyes? How did you keep your eyes on your woman? He said, I would check their cell phone once a month to see who they're calling. I would hire detectives to see where they were going. And I would really watch them carefully in terms of how they interact with men in parties. So then this guy would become violent and drunk if somebody smiled at his wife in a social sense. So now, follow the first four steps. The event, mom says goodbye. The perception, mom deserted us. The core belief, women leave. The daily behavior. The result, 3 divorces. What's the I told you so? Kambiz, didn't I tell you they all leave? Now, if you were an expert healer, which of these 6 rectangles would you work on first? The original event, the perception, the core belief once it was formed, the action, would you correct the person's actions? What would you work on? What would be the fastest way to heal this man? Perception. You can't heal the event because mom left. It's very difficult to correct behavior. If you talk to a smoker, say, stop smoking, and they even go to CVS pharmacy and get an anti-smoking pill that makes them nauseous. You're trying to correct the smoking at the behavioral level. That's very ineffective. But take that person to a cancer clinic, show them some dying people with tubes in their noses, and then show them a black lung in alcohol. And then see what happens.
I'm just curious, because I was going between perception and core belief. I think we go straight to the core belief.
But then always dig for the deeper level. The level deeper than the core belief is, what was the original incident that spurred you on to that belief?
I get that. But I also feel if you started with the core belief instead of going back, that the core belief is what's, if you get to the core belief, the other gets involved.
Right. Except sometimes that core belief is deeply buried in the subconscious mind. So then, if you're a healer that works with this model, you may incite something that subconsciously reminds that person of the original incident. I've done this with clients. I'll get a whiff of what the original incident was, and then I'll construct something that resembles the first one. And the thing about the subconscious mind doesn't understand the passage of time. So if I do something in the year 2014 that barely reminds the person of the original drama, they'll flip out. And then they get to see. As you know, as you probably know, Are you in counseling or psychology in any way? Are you interested in that field?
I'm interested in it.
Yeah. It's like French cooking, you know. Psychology is not 2 + 2 = 4. You have to be an artist and know how to reach in there to cure. So then it becomes very artistic. So then people take different tangents to it. What I find, I have a 30-day course called the Odyssey course. It's an internet course with 2 phone calls to you midweek, to one of the weekends. That Odyssey course takes you through this model. What was the event? How did I interpret it? How did I turn it into my perspective of life? How is it affecting my behavior? And what is my I told you so? Every single one of you in this room has an I told you so. You may not know it. Now, if you have no idea what your self-fulfilling prophecy is, I'll ask you one simple question. What is that one drama that keeps happening? Some of you never have any money. Some of you never have a boyfriend. Some of you are always getting psychosomatic diseases. Some of you are always betrayed by good friends. Some of you are always moving and changing cities. What is your recurring drama? Every one of you has a drama. If you say 0, then I would say I'm sitting in the presence of Christ and the Buddha. It's almost impossible. Until you get this model that what you perceive when your mother says goodbye and you're 3 years old, that's not utter truth. This man worked with me for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden he realized, through my questioning, that Dad was an alcoholic before Mom left. And then he started to realize that Dad used to beat Mom. And then he started to realize that Dad drove Mom away. And then we had 3 weeks of crying because his relationship with women completely changed. He apologized to all 3 ex-wives because he realized that Dad had driven the whole thing, not Mom. So what I'm saying is his perception changed about Mother. And therefore, the perception changed about all women. Now, the 3 ways that I work with people, because I met too many enlightened people at Rishikesh that had not resolved their mom and dad issues. And if you're like that, you may be oming, but you're not a yogi. A yogi stands like this. In other words, they have dealt with the subconscious junk. You can own the subconscious pain away, but the weeds are still under the garden. So all I need to do is trigger. So I spent years in ashrams. A lot of them. Beautiful people. And then after, even in Fairfield, after 3 months, I realized, wow. When I first walked in thinking, this place is full of saints. By the way, an ashram is like a meditation center. Okay? So when I first walked in, I thought, this place must be full of saints. And then you start to see the symptoms. So you're not judging. But you see, it's very difficult to fake well-being. You can't fake it. Iranians have a very nice expression. They say, if you want to get to know somebody, take a few days trip with them. Because during a trip, you have to go to the bathroom. You go to McDonald's together. Somebody gets sleepy and irate. Somebody wants the front seat of the car. Somebody wants to turn the radio down. You get to know them. Take a trip with someone. So then, if you have well-being, it will be known on that trip. It will be impossible for you to fake well-being in a 5-day trip with 6 other people. So look at the 3 ways that I work with people. Ancient knowledge of Kriya Yoga, the awakening of the spiritual electricity, It's cleansing your system, giving you a lot of physical energy, emotional energy, psychic energies. Second one, event, perception, belief, action, result, self-fulfilling prophecy. I need to walk my students through them so that they're standing like this. Third one, in a world of energy, you need to vibrate at the right frequency. What we call a lucky person is somebody that pulsates in tune with nature. Nature is made of this field called pure consciousness. Nature is not chaotic. So if you see a storm, that's not because of chaos. The Vedantas say that storm is part of nature's intelligence. For example, the Bhagavad Gita says, you know, when we make too much of a mess out of this earth, the God force will just do this. Like the tsunami in Sri Lanka and Thailand, wiped out 500,000 in 4 minutes. So is that mean? Not really. Because the ocean is made of the God force. The earthquake under the Indian Ocean was the God force. The people who died were the God force. And so was the baby born the next day. There's no funeral to go to. At the soul level. At the ego level, you curse God. You cry. You go to 400 funerals. There's two types of social workers at the site of the tsunami. Some of them were sobbing. They were ego-based social workers, taking care of physical death. There's another kind of social worker, Mother Teresa. There's a film of her